Jai Hind all of you. So we are revising the topic programming paradigm. I think we all know what is programming paradigm. It is way of writing code, and we have done two types of programming, which is monolithic and procedural programming language. Right? Now what is monolithic programming? Where you write the entire code is written in one function. Right? Even if you're writing a complicated application, if you're making a complicated software, so what you do is you write all the codes in just one function. That type of programming is known as monolithic programming. Then we switched over to procedural programming language, where we made different functions for different modules, right? And what we did is we break the large code into small codes, and we call the functions according to our requirement. So that makes debugging easy and also programming easy. Suppose if you have to add some more feature, that also is very easy to do, right? Using procedural programming, right? So C++ is procedural as well as object-oriented programming language. I think you were introduced with the term object-oriented programming in the previous class, in class 11, right? What is object-oriented programming? What is object-oriented programming? Where you deal with real-time entities. It is a programming which deals with real-life entities. Now what is an entity? Entity is something having properties and function. If we talk about entities, real-time entities, then there are so many entities. Furniture is an entity, right? Furniture has got certain property, right? Now there is, let's say, electronic gadgets, human being, students, these are all entity. Why? Because they all have certain functions and certain properties. Now in object-oriented programming, what we do is we combine both the things, the attribute as well as function, into one unit. We keep the attributes and the function in one unit, and this process of enclosing or putting together the entity, the attributes of the entity and the function of the entity into one unit is known as encapsulation. So what is encapsulation? Putting together the data members and the member functions of that entity, right, into one unit. And that one unit is known as class, right? So this process is known as encapsulation. So we will study about object-oriented programming. Now, why do we do object-oriented programming? It is suitable for modeling the real-world problem as close as possible to the user perspective. Interacting easily with computational environment, right? You know that why we are learning programming language? We are learning programming language to make software for the users. And softwares are the problems based on real world. You develop a software for some customer, for some real world, right? Any entity related to real world. So when you are dealing with entity related to real world, you have to use that in programming, and that is possible only with the help of object-oriented programming. So it deals with real world programming, and it is easy to interact with the computational environment. Now constructing reusable software components as easily extendable library. What does this statement mean? That this means that if you have already coded something, and you want to add some more feature to that, so what you can do is you can reuse the existing code. And how do you reuse the existing code? There is a process of reusing an existing code in object-oriented programming, and that process is known as inheritance. So inheritance is a feature which helps you to reuse an existing code, so you need not write the code from the scratch. What you can do is you can add some more features to it. This is what we are doing in real world also. Are you aware of versioning? Versioning in softwares. Now versioning in softwares means, like, I have Microsoft Word 2007. Right? Microsoft Word 2007 had some features, and then Microsoft 2010 was introduced. Right? Now Microsoft 2010 has some added features. So what is done here? The code of Microsoft Word 2007 has been used as it is, and the new class, Microsoft Word 2010 has been extended, right? The 2007 has been extended into 2010, right? So 10 has got some more features which are not there in 2007, right? The higher version has certain additional features. Agree with this point or not? Right? So this is reusability of code. What they did is they reused the code of Microsoft 2007, extended it into the new version 2010. So this can be done very easily with the help of object-oriented programming. So this is very, very important programming paradigm which we have to learn, and we have to see how do we write code using object-oriented programming language, right? So let us understand the definition. Object-oriented programming is a programming methodology that associates data structures with set of operators which act upon it. Now I will explain this with the help of code. Before that, let us understand the terminologies associated with object-oriented programming. The first terminology is object. Right? And the second one is classes. Now what are classes? Classes are group of similar object. Set of similar object make a class. Like I was telling you about different real life examples. Right? For example, student. Student is a class which has certain properties. What are the properties of student class? Admission number, the name of the student. Right? So these are the properties of student class. Right? And what are the functions of student class? Suppose I have to enroll someone. I have to accept the details of student. I have to display the detail of student. I have to assign a stream to the student. So these are the functions associated with the class student. So you can write program for this using object-oriented programming. Right? Now what is an object? Object is an instance of class. When you you create variables for an integer. How do you create variables for integer? You write the data type int and you write the variable name. So variable names are the names of storage location, right? So similarly, if you are creating a variable of a class, that variable will be known as object. So what is an object? Object is an instance of class. For example, I am talking about student class. So Dipanshu is an instance of student class. Similarly, Vaibhav is an example of student class. You have certain properties. Your name would be different. You have a surname, right? You have a stream. Similarly, all of you are instances, are examples of instances of the class student. I am an instance of class faculty. Clear this? Difference between classes and objects. Now then we have encapsulation. I have already explained you, putting together the data members and the member function of the same class into one unit is known as encapsulation. Then what is data abstraction? Data abstraction is taking out information or data of your requirement. I think I already explained you in class 11 what is abstraction. Suppose if I'm talking about a car. As a driver, you would like to know where are the brakes, the accelerator, the gear, how to start the car. You will not be concerned with the working, inside working of the car. You are going to know how to start the car, how to use accelerator, how to use brakes, how to change the gears. That's it, right? So you will not be concerned with the inside working. So that is your level of abstraction. Similarly, if I talk of watches, you just have to see the time. You are not concerned with the inside working. The parts, different part, what is the metal used, or you will not be concerned with all those things. You just have to see if it is giving you the right time, right? And it is convenient to see the time. That is it. So that is your level of abstraction. Rest of the things are hidden from the external world. So it is with everything. If you look around, you will find different levels of abstraction. Engineer has a different level of abstraction. Student has a different level of abstraction. Users have different level of abstraction. Engineer will go into the inside part, the working, inner working of the gadget. Isn't it? Agree with this? So this is abstraction. Taking out only those information which are of your requirement. Rest of the requirement, rest of the data, rest of the function will be hidden from the external get. Right? Then we have inheritance. What is inheritance? I told you that reusing an existing thing. Suppose if I say there is a class employee and there is I have another class part-time employee. So part-time employee will have all the properties of the employee class. Like the part-time employee will have employee number, employee name, right? Let's say department, right? So certain similar features. It will have all the properties of employee class. Plus, it will have some more features. Some more features maybe working hours will be fixed for part-time employee. Wages will be different. So there is different way of calculating salary. So that is additional thing with the part-time employee. So what you can do is, if you have already created a class employee, what you can do is you can derive another class from an existing one, employee. Right? So deriving one class from another, this process is known as inheritance. We are all human being is a class. ठीक है? Human being से कौन से class निकल के आए? It's if I say human being is a subclass of living things. ठीक है? It has all the features of living thing. ठीक है? Living things से दो classes आप derive कर सकते हो. Plants भी हो सकते हैं, animals भी हो सकते हैं. Right? So animals have certain properties, plants have certain properties. Now from plants you can derive some more classes. Land plants, terrestrial plants and water plants. Water plants can be subdivided. So what you're doing is plants have all the features of its superclass. Superclass is the parent class. Isn't it? It will have all the features of living thing class. It will not have feature of human being class. Agree with this or not? So this process, you see this around. It is all associated. Every terminology is associated with the real world. You can find example in the real world of these terminologies. Right? So what is it? Inheritance. Inheritance is deriving one class from an existing one. So the derived class has all the properties of the base class, that is the parent class. Clear this? Then we have polymorphism. Polymorphism, as the name says, many forms. It has multiple forms. And we have already done this polymorphism in class 11, right? Where you did function overloading. Function overloading is an example of polymorphism. Same function behaves in different way depending upon the parameter that you are passing. Suppose if I have add function, right? Add function taking 2 integers, add function taking 3 integers. So there are 2 functions with the same name but different definition. So depending upon the input you are giving, the functions are called. So that is polymorphism. Anything having different forms, right? Now another example of polymorphism that you have used is plus operator. If you put plus operator between 2 integers, it will work as an arithmetic plus operator. It will add the values. While if you put the plus operator between 2 strings, then it will become concatenation operator. Same plus operator is behaving as concatenation operator. It is concatenating the 2 values. Clear this? So the next slides will make the things more clear. If I talk about object, object has certain attributes and operation. What does operation mean here? The functions. Right? So all the objects will have certain attributes associated with that particular object and certain functions. For example, I have a student object. It has data, certain data. What are the attributes here? Student name, ID, branch and semester. Similarly, it has certain functions: enroll, display info, result and performance. These are the functions of the class student. Right? Now how do we write code? If I am telling you that I can implement this in C++. Suppose if you have to write code for this, you have to make a class which will have these data members. The attributes are known as data members. They are members of a class, so they are known as data members, while the functions are known as member functions. Right? Now suppose if you have to make a class, define a class with the name student. with the following members. How will you do that? Let me open the notepad. So how do you, what is the syntax of defining class? We write the keyword in C++, we write the keyword class. Class is a keyword here which is defined in small case. You write the keyword class, then comes the name of the class. This is very important because the programming that you're going to do in future will be based on object oriented. Everything will be done in object oriented. So please concentrate. You write the keyword class and the name of the class. Name of the class is your choice. It can be any name. It is not anything which is predefined. Is this clear? And how do you, what is the convention of naming a class? Convention is same as that of naming a variable. So I have decided a name for this. Student. I preferred using capital letters. You can define it in any case. Right? If you have defined the class in small case, everywhere you will have to use it in same case. Because C++ is a case sensitive language. Right? Now we write the class, then I have to, let's say I have to make two data members. Data members may I will make the data member, I'll declare data member name and student number. Let us take only two data members, right? So how do we define the data members? Now here you will be introduced with two new terminologies, private and public, right? We write private and colon. Let's say INT, roll number, and for name I will say, is it okay? This is for roll number and the other data member is name, right? Now I will explain the terminology private. Why private? What does this mean? Private is actually hiding the data from the real world. Private, if you make something private, if I talk about my private property, my private properties will be accessible only to me. Nobody can come and open my Almira or take out things from there because that is my private property. And if I talk about public property, the public parts, public जो आपके parks हैं, ठीक है? So that is accessible to anyone. So if you make something public, they are accessible by everyone outside the entity. Is this clear? So if you are making members public, they will be accessible anywhere in a function outside the class. While private members are accessible only within the class. I will make this clear. I have made the two members, roll number and name private. How do you make them private? By writing the label. This is what I have done. I have written the keyword private, colon, and then all the definition below this will become private. So this is private section of the class. Now I have to define two functions. One function to accept values into these two variables and another function to display them. Let us make a very simple class. Right? So how will I make? I will make two functions and the convention for making function is the same that you used to do in procedural programming language. How do you do that? You write the return type. If the function is not returning any value, then what you write is void. Void means nothing, right? So we write void and the name of the function. Name of the function is, let's say, get data. Now this will accept. You can keep writing the code so that you remember. And to accept string, which function do we use? Getters. Right? So this is complete definition of get data. Get data has accepted two values, the roll number and the name. Right? Programming is the same, but what has changed is way of writing. Now I am defining the functions inside a unit, and that unit is a class. What is the name of class here? Student, right? So you are declaring the data members as you used to do in monolithic and procedural programming. But here what you are doing is you are defining the data members, you are declaring the data members inside a unit, that is class. The way of writing code has changed, right? That is the only difference. Now after this, I will write void show data. This will display the values. I will maximize the screen so that it is visible. This is only displaying the values which are accepted by the user, right? Definition of show is also complete. After completing the definition of function show, I will close the braces, right? After this, I do not want to declare or define any other functions inside this class. So I want to close the definition of the class. How do you end the definition of the class? You put a semicolon, closing braces and a semicolon, right? The definition of the class always ends with a semicolon. You close the braces, the braces that you opened while defining the class, this opening braces, right? The top one, right? So it has been closed because class definition has ended. Now this is just the blueprint. I think I told you earlier also that when you are defining a class, you are just giving a blueprint. That what does this mean? The variables roll number and name are not occupying any memory location. They are just defined there, right? Now suppose if you have to store a value, suppose you have to store name and roll number of a particular student, so what you will have to do, you will have to instantiate the class. You will have to create the instance, and that instance will get space in the RAM where you can store the value. Am I clear? And we are also not allowed to do this. We cannot do this here. You are not allowed to assign any value. If you write this, you will get an error. I hope you remember this. The same definition was with structures also. When you are defining structure, you are just defining a blueprint. Why is this statement invalid? Because roll number does not has any space in RAM. Where will you store the value? Getting my point? रोल नंबर के पास तो स्पेस ही नहीं है. जब स्पेस नहीं है तो वैल्यू कहाँ जाएगी? आई बात समझ में? It is only a blueprint. This is what I am trying to explain you. और इसमें वैल्यूज कब जाएगी? जब आप इसका ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट करोगे. Clear this? Now before executing this code, I need to include certain header files. Which header files will I include? IOStream .h, conio.h, and another file that I have to include is, yes, very good, stdio.h for getS function, because I have used getS function, so for that I will have to use stdio.h. Is this code clear to all of you? Any confusion with this code? It's a very simple program which is demonstrating the use of classes. How do you define a simple class? Right? Now I have declared all the members inside the private section of the class. And we will see what problem I will face. Okay? Then I will introduce a new keyword, that is public. Before that I would like to show you the problem, and then I will introduce the terminology public. Right? So I would like to instantiate this in main program. The class name is student, let's say S, right? Now what you have to do is you have to store the details of the student and display them. So to store the details of the student, I would like to call the function accept data. There is a function accept data which is accepting the values into roll number and name. Getting my point? So I will call the function. फंक्शन की हेल्प से हम उन डेटा में वैल्यू स्टोर कर पाएंगे. क्यों? क्योंकि मैंने डेटा को प्राइवेट बना दिया. ठीक है? I will show you. I cannot do this. I am not allowed to do this. I can show you. This statement will give you an error. I am saving this file with a name. Let's say demo.cpp. I will override the existing file demo.cpp. This is stored, right? And I will open this in C++ environment. I have already opened the compiler, C++ compiler. I will open the file. Is it visible? Let me compile and show you the errors, and I will debug the program here only. What is the error here? The variable names has been misspelled. I have written S here while it was declared as NAME. This is an error. What is the second error? Second error says student roll number is not accessible. Why this message? Because roll number is private member of the class and it cannot be accessed by outside world with the help of object. This was the idea behind object-oriented programming. Right? We wanted to hide our data. Data is very important. So to stop the misuse of the data, I will have to hide them. And how do you hide the data, or how do you hide the members of a class? By writing private keyword. So this statement is invalid. This statement is not possible. So how will you store values into it? Similarly, you cannot accept value here because it is not accessible by the object. So how will you store value? By calling the, even this statement is going to give you an error. What will be the error? Again the same error. It is not accessible. Why? Because get data has been made private. इसका मतलब आपकी क्लास को कोई यूज ही नहीं कर पाएगा. What is the point of defining class? कम से कम functions को तो accessible रखो outside world को. So I will make these two functions. Get data is for the user. Similarly, display data is to be used by the user. So I will make these two functions public functions of the class. And how do you make them public? By writing the keyword public and a colon. This will solve the problem. I will call both the functions and show you how. Is it okay? Any confusions to anyone? Now let me execute this code now. It is compiled successfully. Why? Because the two functions were made public. So they are accessible by the instance of the class. Instance of the class यहाँ पे कौन सा है? S is the instance of the class. So here in this code, student is the class, S is the object. Get data and show data are the member functions of the class. Name and roll number are the data members. Clear this? Any confusion to anyone? I will execute this code. It is asking me for a roll number and name. So it gets executed and you get the output on the screen. Okay? Now you can write a question. All of you write a question, you will solve this question. Write a program in C++. Write a program in C++ to create a class student or let us make it employee. Employee. To create a class employee with the following description. With the following description. Private members, data members. Under private members you will write data members, employee ID, name,